Okay, now it's happening. Okay, now we're starting. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the farewell ceremony for the 7th Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the Honorable Alejandro Mayorkas. We are delighted to be joined here today by the Mayorkas family, many honored guests, including White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients, hundreds of DHS employees and alumni here in Hitchcock Hall at our headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I just got the count that there are over 1,000 of our colleagues streaming this on Teams, so hello to the outstations. I invite you to please stand as you are able for the presentation of colors by the Coast Guard Honor Guard. Please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem by Tabitha P. Massenberg of the Transportation Security Administration.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Coast turn. Who?
Thank you. Thank you, Tabitha. That was beautiful. You may be seated. So good afternoon again. I'm Commander K. Lord Fallon, United States Coast Guard, and it is my absolute honor to serve as MC this afternoon to ensure that we properly and thoroughly celebrate Secretary Mayorkas, or as he is known to the entire federal workforce, Santo Mayorkas, the patron saint of administrative leave. I will take a moment of privilege at the top to share an observation about the Secretary. After just about a year of serving as his military aide, the Secretary asked me to take on a new role in the department as the department's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. A significant part of my portfolio in this role has consisted of calling the Secretary at all hours, and I think the Mayorkas family can attest to this, during holidays, on weekends, in the middle of the workday, but most often, for some reason, in the middle of the night. And these calls were to inform the secretary that disaster had struck. A shooting at a school, and a mall, and a grocery store, a bridge collapse, a cyber attack, or tornado, a flood, a fire, the beginning of a war, an assassination attempt, an act of terrorism. Even when the situation was still a frenzied and fiery blur, and regardless of the catastrophe before us, every single call with the secretary was the same. Secretary Mayorkas never, ever panicked. He never indulged in the impulse to be swept away by the moment or the devastation or the magnitude of the suffering. He never, ever second-guessed the members of our department on the front lines doing the work to beat back calamity. His trust in the workforce to get it right was absolute, and his faith in DHS's leaders to do the right thing was implicit. In the darkness of those moments, Secretary Mayorkas was quiet, he was calm, and he listened. He asked what was needed, and he asked how he or we could help. And when he was satisfied that he knew enough, he got to work, and then we made it better. Quietly, calmly, in the midst of crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis, Secretary Mayorkas was, without fail, exactly who this department needed him to be. He fought for our missions, our workforce, our partners. He took ownership of our shortcomings, and he lionized our many, many successes. He told our story. No one on earth knows this department or loves this department more than Secretary Mayorkas. He led us to be the organization that this nation needs us to be, when it matters the most. We help victims recover from disasters and prepare for the next one. We get the nation's critical infrastructure back online and secured against our adversaries. We give refuge and bring order. We uphold justice and human dignity. We defend our land and maritime borders, our skies and our seas. We protect every single federal employee, and we protect democracy. We are a department of 260,000 law enforcers and lifesavers and hope givers and protectors. Those early hour calls with the secretary taught me that a good day at DHS is when no call comes in, but the best days are when we get to answer that call. Secretary Mayorkas, you answered the call. Ooh, can't look at you during this. Oof. Every single time. And it was truly something to behold. So now, as we celebrate him, I just hope you all hold that sentiment in the heart that we had the right person in the right job at the right time. And now, with a decided tonal shift, Ricky Seidman, Senior Counselor to the Secretary.
Hello, friends. First, I want to say ditto to Kay's remarks and all those to come. There's simply not enough time to express and capture everything. Today, I'm going to focus on Alejandro Mayorkas, the person. Ali, thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve at the Department of Homeland Security. In the fall of 2021, when you asked me to join DHS, I was on the fence. You had been my friend since 2009, but I wasn't so sure about the department. I reasoned, being older and taller, I could be that person unafraid to give you feedback. Meaning tell you when you're full of it. Everyone needs someone like that, right? So to speak. When I arrived at the department, I quickly discovered that I was nothing special, except for being older. At Allie's Department of Homeland Security, everyone has safe space to give input and feedback. Everyone is heard, accepted, and embraced by the Secretary and other senior leadership. Allie, you instilled in me deep devotion to all of DHS's missions. You made me a small part, of an extraordinary team that together has confronted and addressed the most meaningful challenges I've seen in a very long career. And you haven't just built the best team in government, you've created a family that we can all feel part of. I've never met a leader who took their job more personally than Ali Mayorkas, and I don't mean thin-skinned. It starts with his name. To everyone who addresses him as Secretary Mayorkas, the first thing he intentionally says is, "Call me Ali." Countless times in front of audiences of several hundred people, usually law enforcement, Ali has said, "If there's anything I can do, just call or text me. Here's my number." And he means it, and they do. Ali knows everyone's partners, their kids, and their dogs. He always recognizes the family. Last Friday, even Goose got a certificate at the departure ceremony for the deputy. Tanya, Giselle, and Mimi, I know this job has taken away a lot of family time, but you need to understand how constantly he is thinking of you and the sacrifices you have made that enabled him to serve so effectively. You'll hear a lot today about how Ali has championed the workforce, and he certainly has. But to him, it's not a workforce. He means each and every human being. In 2022, on a visit to a CBP office at Port of Miami to see their work on fentanyl and other narcotics interdiction, I saw him in action. The place was unaffectionately called the House of Pain. The space was dark and hangar-like, the lighting was poor. They literally had modems to access the internet. And keep in mind, this was in 2022. And I don't even want to describe the state of the restrooms. Ali made a list and he convened a meeting the very next morning. Within a couple weeks, I think, they had new lighting. They had internet. And within a year, the entire facility had been repaired and upgraded, including with a break room and a fitness center. Wherever Ali traveled, he made a point to meet with people in the DHS workforce. Sometimes he traveled just to do those meetings. He never just spoke, he was always there to listen. His listening skills set him apart as a leader. I know he crafted remarks for today, and he's the best and most grammatically correct writer at headquarters. But he truly shines in fireside chats, where he can hear people's concerns and answer their questions candidly. Thanks to his listening and follow-through, DHS was the most improved department last year in terms of employee morale and was recognized as one of the best places to work in government. It is no surprise to anyone here that many administration opponents in Congress tried to make Ali their personal punching bag. Videos of his hearings have become training films for officials facing hostile questions. But as difficult as it got, Ali never wavered or weakened. His resilience stemmed from qualities he holds dearly and exhibits daily: honesty and integrity, deeply held moral values, civility, and humanity. And that's the last thing I want to touch on, Ali's humanity. It's all in his smile. You all have seen it. No matter how serious the subject, how intense the meeting, how difficult the problem, before you leave his office or before he exits the room, he flashes that trademark smile, always sincere, always authentic. I tried to do it, I can't. It's a smile that says, no matter how bad things are, we will do our very best to fix them. No matter how tired you are, it's important that we keep moving forward. And no matter how great the challenge, we are all in this together, and for that, I am grateful. Ali, I know I speak for everyone in this room, the people on the web, many, many, many more, when I say, for you, we are grateful. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ricky. Next up, the Department of Homeland Security Chief of Staff, Jonathan Davidson.
Good afternoon. It is a distinct honor to be here with all of you, with Team Mayorkas, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Secretary's leadership. It's interesting to come to a place that's mid-stride, and you learn a lot about a human being in a very different way. I've worked with a lot of leaders, and I'm very, very fortunate to have loved every one of them, none more than Ali Mayorkas. In Washington, we talk about leadership in very sincere terms. Often we say character, competence, intellect, charisma, decency. We have lots of very active words for leadership. And the Secretary obviously has all of those characteristics and more, but the Mayorkas standard for leadership is a very different one, and I want to talk a little bit about that as we go on here. If we're being honest about Washington, there are some distasteful characteristics of leadership. There's a standard that is often set by those who are precious with their potential. I think you know these people, the ones who look over your shoulder at a cocktail party to kind of see what their next opportunity could look like. That approach is about career curation. It's about posturing often for headlines. It's controversy avoidance. And there are those who criticize and opine, usually with very little knowledge. It's one of my favorites, the strong and wrong. Here's something we all know about government. It's frickin' hard. It's harder than it looks. And the Department of Homeland Security is where Congress, in its infinite wisdom, housed every single problem in the too complicated drawer. So its mission is the apex of difficulty. And each day, the men and women, all of you here, do their jobs with the least amount of glory, then most amount of risk and sacrifice. They run into danger, you all run into danger, knowing you'll be excoriated by those who know nothing of real danger for doing it all wrong. So when someone with the talent and trajectory of one Ali Mayorkas, incredible talent, takes on the role of secretary for this incredible place, there were some in town who scratched their heads. Ali could make plenty of money. Tanya, I think, is aware of that. He could do something else in service. And I think even the president may have asked him twice, are you sure you're willing to take this job? Here's the thing about Ali Mayorkas. When he's asked to do something incredibly tough, incredibly challenging, usually things that most others won't do, sometimes that no one else would ever do, he says yes, and then he goes and works his ass off. Secretary Mayorkas would be the first to say that the real heroes of this department are the people I've mentioned before, and he and others will talk more, as was mentioned before, about toughness and high character of all of you and the others here. But I want to talk about his. From my time with Ali, I've learned quite a bit about his family, his story, where he comes from, who his parents were, how tough they were, who his siblings are, how tough they are, his wife, Tanya, his kids, Giselle and Mimi, about Louis, the king, and how tough they are, sometimes on Ali. So when the secretary dives into a problem and the hardest thing without worrying about his own personal sacrifice, I know where it comes from, it's not surprising. Ali and the Mayorkas family are the very best of America and our ideals. And they have and they have zero interest in being precious. Zero. Because my own words are insufficient, I'm going to conclude with a poem. Controversial author aside, I've been told that by Kay that I can separate the art from the artist. Although, Kay, it's a new day in America. We have a new president. Sorry, Jeff. Crypto winter has turned into spring. It's coming. Rudyard Kipling is back in vogue all of a sudden in our classrooms. No, maybe not. I think he's trending on Twitter right now. In any event, I think Kipling's words capture the essence of Ali Mayorkas and offer lessons for all of us aspiring leaders. Many of us know the poem If, and I've used artistic license and written my own ending, so forgive me, it doesn't rhyme. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make your thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you've given your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can have unassailable integrity and character, even when no one else is watching, if you can run towards every problem with intellect, humanity, tireless effort, if you can ensure everyone around you instead of you receives the credit for any success, and if you can do it all while vitriol spews from those who seek to undercut you, and do it with unwavering grace, a grace that would make the individuals with the very highest values the proudest, that would make Charles and Anita so proud, you can achieve the Mayorkas standard for leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I don't know what he was talking about. Next up, please welcome Jennifer B. Higgins, Deputy Director of United States Citizenship and Immigration Services and former Acting Department of Homeland Security Chief of Staff.
Thanks, Kay. So I'm going to start my remarks with a number, 4,140. Anyone have a guess on what that number could be? Well, while you ponder that for a moment, let me introduce myself quickly and tell you why I'm standing here today. As Kay said, I am currently the Deputy Director for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and I first met the Secretary 15 years ago. And while I don't remember the exact day that occurred or the exact circumstances in which we met, I do remember a warm, outstretched hand and that beaming smile saying, "Hi, Ali Mayorkas, nice to meet you." And anyone who meets Ali Mayorkas for the first time knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's simply a genuine warmth and curiosity that the Secretary brings to every encounter he has with an individual. I was working in the Refugee Affairs Division at that time, and as a DHS plank holder, I had the opportunity to interact with Director Mayorkas's predecessors. They were all wonderful directors, and there were even some similarities among them. For example, our prior directors all had immigration stories. They were all of, well, a similar stature. And to be clear, when I say stature, I mean height, maybe like that, not status. But there was a buzz around our new director, and it was undeniable. As he settled into his new role, people remarked, "Wow, he really wants us to call him Ali. What a tireless work ethic. This guy must never sleep. What a formidable legal mind. What an eagle eye for typos and a dedication to proper punctuation. I can't believe he remembered my, fill in the blank, my name, my spouse's name, my dog's name, my vacation plans. What a remarkable vision he has for an empowered and engaged and celebrated workforce. These were all common refrains throughout his time as director at USCIS. And over the years, I have been really fortunate to work closely with the secretary in the different roles that he took on after that, and on a number of tough assignments, including serving as his chief of staff twice. You see, one of Alejandro Mayorkas' superpowers is giving other people a platform to shine, encouraging them to get out of their comfort zone, to cultivate and grow their talents, to reach their full potential, even when they might not see it or even believe it. Sir, you trusted me with a lot of hard assignments over the years, but this one, actually, trying to articulate a worthy farewell speech, one that sufficiently reflects and honors the extent and scope of your contributions to this department, this is the toughest one yet. So that takes us back to that number that I started my speech with, 4,140. Did anyone come up with a guess on what that number is? No? It's the number of days that Alejandro Mayorkas has worked at DHS, serving first as the director of USCIS, then as the DHS deputy secretary, and then as the DHS secretary. I decided not to deduct weekends or holidays or vacations from that number because, as we well know, he didn't really take them. Or if he did, he worked through them. 4,140 days of public service at this department. And when I think about how he spent those days, I am certain that every single one of them started and ended with him thinking through an endless list of intractable issues that he had to solve, tackle, or fix. The Haiti earthquake, DACA implementation, security vetting enhancements, 1325 prosecutions, that probably came up over and over, NTAS, Title 42, cyber threats and cybercrime, hurricane response, safe, orderly migration pathways, enforcement priorities, responsible AI, Southwest border operations, northern border operations, immigration reform. None of these items will surprise the people that are gathered here today, and you all know it's just a small subset of the issues that he had to tackle. But what you might not realize is that sprinkled within all of those issues and those topics were a running list of names. Thousands of names of public servants, I'm sure if you added them up over those 4,140 days, names of public servants at every level across the 24 components of the department, names of employees that Alejandro Mayorkas wanted to personally thank for their contributions to the department through a handwritten note, an email, a phone call, or even formally with an award. And I know that there wasn't a single day, even on the tough days, the anguish days, the tragic days, maybe the joyful days if there were any, where Ali Mayorkas did not think about reaching out and acting and reaching out to a public servant to say thank you. Secretary Mayorkas' vision for solving the wicked problems that face this department has transformed it, certainly, and benefited our country and the American people. There is no question. But when I think about your legacy, sir, it is your people first, mission always approach. Policies and priorities will change and evolve with the times and the need, but the thousands of employees that you reached out to and thanked or recognized or empowered, Secretary, they will remember it. They will remember it. And that legacy is going to have a ripple effect, an outsized and continuous impact, because it carries through like an invisible string that connects each generation of the DHS workforce to the next one, making our agency stronger and more effective at serving the American people for the future. Thank you for your moral courage, for always doing what's right for the country, for the American public, and for this department. Thank you for your fierce advocacy of the men and women of the DHS workforce. Thank you to Tanya, Giselle, and Mimi, and your dog, Louie, for your sacrifice and service to the nation. Secretary, it has been a privilege and honor of a lifetime to serve alongside you, and we are so grateful for your service.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, next up, please help me welcome the Director of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers and former Acting Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Benjamin Kari Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I hope you know that the irony is not lost on me. The fact that you asked me to delay my retirement 4 different times. I did it at your request. Now you're leaving, and I'm still here. So a little background on that. For those that don't know me, I spent 38 years on the job with U.S. Border Patrol and Customs Border Protection, and I tried retiring 4 different times, but I delayed it at the Secretary's request, or it might have been Troy Miller's request. I'm not sure, and he just said it was from you. I'm not really sure where that actually came from, but that's what I did, and I did finally retire in June of 2023. So that's fine. I'm out a little bit, and one day I'm driving down there, and I moved back to West Texas. I'm driving down the road, minding my own business, living life pretty good, and I see this number come on, and it's a 202 number. Everybody knows 202 numbers from Washington, D.C. is headquarters calling, and headquarters is always bad news. Let's be clear about that. They don't call you from headquarters if it's good. But I think, wait a minute, I'm retired. I mean, what difference does it make to me now, right? So I answer the call, and this guy gets on the phone and says, "Hello, Kari. I don't know if you remember me. This is Alejandro Mayorkas." I said, "Yes, sir. I do remember you." And I looked over at my wife and said, "Honey, I'm going to need that bottle of Maalox after all here." So I was calling, and so he called me out of retirement and asked me if I'd like to continue my service as the director of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and I'm happy to do so, and I am proud to be here to do that and honored to be here to speak today. So I'm going to add, apologies, one other story that wasn't on my script, only because we talked about, you mentioned a little bit earlier, but and it has to do with the admin leave days, or the St. Mayorkas days, as they call them, but which are really good. So in the spring of 2023, the Secretary was down in South Texas, and we were dealing with a few issues down there, and I'd gone with him to be with him, and we were doing a few Border Patrol musters, which is kind of like a town hall, except Border Patrol calls it a muster, and it's before a shift starts, and people ask questions. And as y'all may well know, some of those Border Patrol musters can be a little frosty sometimes. They have been a little bit. So we're at one in McAllen, and actually it was going pretty good. It was pretty. It was cool, but it was respectful, and thanks for asking questions. And then towards the last, there was one guy raised his hand, and me being in the Border Patrol so long, you can spot the clowns pretty quick, right? So I knew we had a question coming here, and he raised his hand, and he's very respectfully said, "Sir, are you going to continue to give those admin leave days?" Secretary responded, "Well, my staff tells me I can do up to 10 a year, so I'm going to continue to do those as far as I can." And so he got a huge round of applause at that muster, kind of like the one you had earlier today. So I remember telling him, "Sir, this is as good as it gets. It's time to get out of here. We're getting a round of applause at a Border Patrol muster. It's time to get gone." So, I do have a daughter that's a Border Patrol agent that's on the front line as we speak today. And she said if I could pass back on that you still have a few days left, you want to drop those 10 days for the rest of the year? They're all in favor of that. Just throwing that there. I'm not suggesting it, sure. I'm just passing on the message. That's all right. So that's good. No. So as we all know, Secretary Mayorkas' number one priority has been taking care of the workforce. That's the hallmark of what we know about him. Workforce care has been a constant priority every year of his tenure at the department. So my challenge here today is kind of capture his meaningful commitment to the workforce with just a few words. And so I decided to tell a story, I believe, that about one particular time he did that I think that captures that somewhat and is representative of his character. So the COVID years, they were difficult for all of us. We all know that. It was a difficult time for everybody here. It hit CBP especially hard. We had 55 line of duty deaths from COVID alone during that time period. So I spent a lot of times going to funerals around the country and along with Troy Miller, and taking care of their family members became a very kind of daunting challenge. It's pretty tough. But it was during this time that we became aware of an unintended consequence of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, that was having a very negative impact on the surviving family members. So this is kind of a policy wonky story, but it's important. So I've tried to summarize it in such a way that we can capture it easy enough that everybody understands what's going on here. But it's very important to the survivors, our COVID survivors. So as it turns out, the death benefits for survivors of officers who died by COVID during the effective dates of ARPA will end in 2030. This is significant because the survivors of line of duty deaths, they have two options when they process their benefits from when their spouse or their spouse passed away. First option is they can accept the Federal Employees Compensation Act, FECA, which pays the surviving spouse, about 75% of the employee's salary, and it's non-taxable. Or they can accept the OPM benefits, which pays about 50% of the employee's salary and is taxable. And once they make that choice, it cannot be changed. So obviously, the majority of them select the FECA, the Federal Employee Compensation Act, because that pays the most and it's not taxable. It's the best for them. So then, as this was going on, I was contacted by Brenda Dominguez. She's a surviving spouse of a Border Patrol agent who died from COVID. And she told me that she had received a letter from the Department of Labor telling her that her benefits would expire in 2030. So, this was a surprise and a shock to me because I was not aware of that. So we researched that and confirmed that employees that died from COVID between January 2020 and January 2023 were impacted by ARPA. Those that died from COVID before and after were not, and the survivors were not allowed to go back and switch to the OPM benefits, which, although compensated less, they would continue well beyond 2030. So as you can imagine, on top of dealing with the loss of their loved ones, they were now facing with the added stress of financial uncertainty, and this is not how we treat survivors of those who sacrifice their life for our country. So this news all developed as we were preparing to participate in the 2022 CBP Valor Memorial, and Secretary Mayorkas was there at CBP headquarters to speak at this event, as he spoke at every event and never missed one of those. So I took a moment to brief him on the situation, how it was impacting some of our survivors. And he was as shocked and surprised as we were. And his exact words to me were, "This cannot stand." So he knew we could not rewrite ARPA, that it will take a legislative fix and take some time, but maybe he could influence OPM to change their rules so the survivors could switch to the OPM benefits in 2030. He told us to prepare him a note explaining the situation and send it to him directly. We did that, and although I don't know the particulars of what happened beyond that, I do know that now our survivors will now have the ability to switch from ARPA to OPM benefits in 2030 if a legislative solution is not finalized by them. This is just one. This is just one of the many things. I know all the other agents, all the components have an opportunity. They have different stories and events that can say so, but this is one of these meaningful things that makes a real difference in the lives of people every day that's unknown to most of the country. Most of the employees don't know. Most of the workforce don't know. This is kind of behind-the-scenes care and concern that you see from Secretary Mayorkas that he displayed every single day, every time I was around him, every time I dealt with the workforce. That was the focus on it. The focus of those admin leave days was to take care of the workforce. That's what those were for. And that, to me, demonstrates his character somewhat, sir. And so I want, on behalf of the components of the Department of Homeland Security, I want to tell you thank you so much for your care and concern for the workforce. You have set a standard of workforce care that's going to live long beyond your tenure. It's going to continue on throughout the history of the Department of Homeland Security and will stay that way because we have good leadership here that will make sure that stays that way. And so we're grateful for those as well. So thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership in those areas and taking care of the workforce. So I want to wish you the very best in all your future endeavors. Not sure what they are, but you need to know that in case any of those don't work out, we always need role players at FLETC, and you're welcome to come down. We can hook you up at any moment, sir. So, thank you. So I was going to say, if you could indulge me, I shaved off a few moments of my time, but actually added minutes to my time. But nonetheless, I want to turn this over to Chief Owens, who has an award for you as well. Chief.
I got to imagine that everybody in this room, probably having served in government in some form or fashion, has had hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of training, education, schooling in leadership and in what that is. And I think if you look back, because I have, and you start to think about how many times you've seen somebody that you actually considered to be what exemplified the best characteristics of a leader, it's pretty few and far between. You think about the folks that you've come up under or that you've worked alongside, and there's probably plenty out there that you think, man, technically proficient, they know their job, they're exceptionally intelligent, witty, charismatic, tall. Secretary Mayorkas obviously possesses most of those. But there's also a different one. It's very rare that you get a chance to look into somebody's heart and see what they're about, see the core of their character. And I think I'm one of the few that's probably had the opportunity to do that. I heard a lot of people talk about the first time they got to meet Secretary Mayorkas. And yeah, absolutely right. When you meet him in person for the first time, handshake, warm embrace, smile on his face, and just the easiest person in the world to talk to, as long as he's happy. Mine was a little different. My introduction to the Secretary was by a telephone. He was up here in D.C., and I was in the parking lot of Robb Elementary in Uvalde. You can imagine, if you've ever been in one of these situations, how chaotic it is in the moment when things are unfolding. And there's never a shortage of people up the chain. They're calling, demanding answers, wanting to know what's happened, keeping up to date on every little detail. And somehow those details always get skewed and wrong. We end up having to correct and try and make them right again after the fact. But that wasn't the phone call. The first concern from Allie was, are your men and women okay? And quickly followed, how are you doing? Are you okay? That may seem small to some, but I suspect for many people in here, you understand what that means. That was my introduction to Alejandro Mayorkas. And from that moment, a lot of the interactions were exactly the same. Every single tragic incident we had, every time somebody in this uniform laid down their life in service to this country in the line of duty, he was there for the service. Every time we had a contentious, and if you know the Border Patrol, we've had some contentious years. And Chief Huffman talking about the salty mustards, I think, is being very generous. If there's one moment for me that captures in time the Secretary's relationship to the men and women of the United States Border Patrol, it was at a muster, and I believe it was Laredo. I didn't get to be there in person for that, but I saw it as many of you did. And he said, you can turn your back on me, but I will never turn my back on you. That also is Alejandro Mayorkas in a nutshell. I got to see him walk the walk after saying those words. No matter how much they may have been angry at him, maybe hated him, he never stopped trying to do what was best for them. He never stopped trying to do what was best for the United States Border Patrol. I got to see that, and so for that I'm extremely and eternally grateful. So I have, on behalf of the United States Border Patrol, the highest commendation we can give to somebody outside of this uniform. And I'm not going to read the entirety of it, I'll let you do that, except to say that it's for distinguished and exemplary service because you left us better than you found us. You'll never hear this. You'll never hear this enough, and probably not from all the men and women whose lives we'll never know you've touched. But thank you for everything. God bless you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, we've got the senior official performing the duties of Deputy Secretary, Christy Canagallo.
Hi, good afternoon. What a wonderful gathering of the DHS team and our partners, befitting someone who we all respect so much. And like so many of us who have spoken at farewell ceremonies, I am confronted with the age-old question, to roast or not to roast? And Chief Owens, your powerful comments, make me question that. So let me just take a poll of the audience. Roast, not roast, how are people feeling? Roast, roast, roast? I have to tell you, I thought there would be more of a mixed message from the audience. It's something that some people may wonder, is it okay to roast the Secretary of Homeland Security? Oh, it definitely is. Just ask the current and former mill aides. Semper Paratus with a quip, those ones. What many of you know is that this man can give as good as he gets. Just last week, in response to a joke about his height, and I mean, rare that happens, just the 7 times so far, he stood on a chair and towering over everyone yelled, "I call bullshit." Sir, knowing that you look for elevation wherever you can get it, as you see, we've gotten you another chair. Now, what folks may not know is that this is the Secretary's chair from the Cabinet Room in the White House, and it is engraved with his name and service. Secretary, we do also have a phone book backstage that will travel with the chair when you like. Too far? Too far? For someone who carries so much on his shoulders that he takes time to create levity and create that permission structure to what are rightly serious and stressful jobs is just one of the ways that his humility shines through. Now, this is not a joke. No single individual has been more consequential to the growth, the maturity, and the impact of the Department of Homeland Security than Alejandro Mayorkas. He will hate that I have said this. Notwithstanding the smile, sometimes, I know, Secretary, you will hate that I've said that because you'll say it wasn't about you, it was about you. And the undeniable truth is that the 260,000 men and women of this department are the reason for any success that we have had. But precisely the reason that he has been so singularly impactful is because for Secretary Mayorkas, it was never about him. It was always about you, the DHS workforce, and it was always about the American people who we serve. And you've heard this time and time again today, and I am guessing that everyone in this room has felt it. His North Star is supporting and championing our team. That means advocating for DHS on the Hill and securing the biggest budget increase in DHS history. It means leading a systemic effort to understand the needs of our team members and respond to them, like pay fairness at TSA or the House of Pain, time and time again. Efforts that, among others, as Ricky talked about, led to DHS being named the most improved place to work in the federal government. And it means doing everything he can to acknowledge our workforce and how they've consistently gone above and beyond. When Jennifer shared her 4,000 number, I thought it was a number that I had in my head, which is that he has personally recognized through the Secretary Awards 4,000 team members this year. And he's done so not just here in DHS, which, as Kari has already made clear, the views on folks from the field, but he did it in the field where people are doing the real work. And of course, we all know, and he is beloved for, the meaningful gesture of the Time Off Awards. Santo Mayorkas has already been talked about today. Now, I wish that we could have provided everyone as a memento for coming the Santo Mayorkas coin, or alternatively, the Santo Mayorkas prayer candle. Unfortunately, for those of us who are looking for it on eBay, it is sold out. Anyone who knows the Secretary knows that his drive to deliver for the DHS workforce is genuine because it comes from a lifelong admiration of and respect for the men and women who keep us safe, one that was instilled by his parents, which John talked about, and cultivated in his decade of service as an assistant U.S. attorney. So when he came to lead the largest federal law enforcement agency, he not only understood what our agents and officers and our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners needed to be successful, he brought a deliberate focus to delivering it. He updated and secured increases to our grant programs for law enforcement. He built and strengthened partnerships. He improved information sharing. He restructured our department to make sure that law enforcement had a permanent, prominent seat at the decision-making table. And internally, he personally drove changes that had a meaningful difference, bringing more agents onto the line, making sure that our service personnel were getting retention bonuses. He also ensured that we were delivering for our law enforcement by designing and architecting our overall approach to toughened consequences and expanded lawful pathways on our border, which has reduced border encounters to levels not seen since 2019, notwithstanding historic global migration. All this as he has positioned DHS as the US government's leader in artificial intelligence, made transformational improvements to customer service to include at FEMA and at TSA, helped the world and our partners understand that national security and homeland security are inextricably linked, and so much more. This man, who has served 11 of the 22 years of our department, has, through his vision, his leadership, and his unparalleled work ethic, set DHS on a stronger path for the next 20. We are a department that is more fit for purpose than ever before, and we are a nation that is more prepared and resilient to face the threats that lie ahead, and that is thanks to Alejandro Mayorkas. But what makes him a truly remarkable leader is that, as every one of our speakers has talked about today, he does his work with simply the highest level of integrity, compassion, and decency, making those around him feel and be seen and heard. He has what is unquestionably one of the hardest jobs in the US government, but he always has time to thank the visiting Coast Guard petty officer who stopped by, send a note to the CISA team member who had a death in the family, or call to check in on the ICE officer who was injured on the job. That's just who he is. He does his work with a deep humanity, as Ricky talked about, both in his focus on our workforce and in how he thinks about our responsibilities to the American people. He reveres this department, its sacred mission, and its people. And Secretary, I hope you know that it and we revere you right back. For your love of country, for your love of our team, and for your love of work worth doing. But we know what guides you above all else is love of your family. Secretary, you have left an indelible mark in this department, and it has truly been the privilege of a lifetime to serve alongside you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do so.
Now, please welcome White House Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients.
Well, thank you, everybody. And on behalf of the President, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and myself, I am here not to roast, but I think it's important to set the record straight. Ali Mayorkas is a fine, sensible height. I want to start by thanking the entire team here at the Department of Homeland Security for the unbelievably critical work that you all do to keep the country safe and to create a better future for all of us. Above all, I want to thank this extraordinary man we're all here to honor and celebrate today, Secretary Mayorkas, a man whose remarkable career and life is the embodiment of public service and an inspiration to all of us. Ali's not just a man of great judgment, but a man of principle, character, and kindness. A truly good person, a true friend, and an indispensable leader. We all know about his incredible journey. People have talked about it as a Latino and Jewish refugee from Cuba, and as a lawyer and law enforcement official. He's always been on the front lines of managing many challenges throughout his remarkable 30-year career. From Ebola and Zika to human trafficking, money laundering, and more. That's why President Biden knew that when it came time to select someone to run the Department of Homeland Security, there was only one person who could count on to do the job and do it right and do it well. Over the past 4 years, Ali has navigated the most pressing, grueling, and stressful challenges of our time. Standing up mass vaccination sites when COVID was raging, managing migrant encounters at the border, responding to natural disasters, active shooters, the fentanyl epidemic, and so much more. No matter what the challenge, Ali is the guy you want on your team when things get tough. He has the conviction to make the difficult calls and the courage to make the right choices, even if they're unpopular. We've all seen how gifted he is as a leader. When everyone else runs away, Ali's always the first to run and help out. When others hand off the heaviest lifts to others, Ali doesn't back away or shirk responsibility. He owns it. When others feel overwhelmed by a problem, Ali is completely undaunted and absolutely fearless in trying to solve it. And no matter what it is or how loud the noise, Ali always leads with integrity and fairness, always stays above the fray, and always makes sure that we get to the right answer and do what's best for the country. I'll close with this story. I was lucky enough to be the co-chair of then President-elect Biden's transition team in 2020. President Biden knew Ali from the Obama-Biden administration days. When we told the president that Ali was on the list of potential secretaries for Homeland Security, the president wanted to meet with him right away. So just a day or two later, they met in Wilmington. I was in the room for that. They had a long conversation on both policy and approach. It was clear to me that they were on the same page from the beginning. Ali listened carefully as the president told him that the job of DHS was likely one of the hardest, if not hardest, in the entire administration. And he asked him, as stated earlier, why the heck would you take this job? And he asked him that a couple of times. And then he asked Ali to write a memo and send it over to him in the next few days, capturing his approach. But Ali didn't get it to him days later. He got it to him that night. And it wasn't just the speed, but also the quality of the thinking that so impressed the president. Ali's expertise and command over such a diverse range of topics, from cybersecurity to disaster response. From that day, the president knew he had the right person to be his Secretary of Homeland Security. The president trusts Ali's judgment and character. He knows Ali does everything in his power to keep our country safe and secure. And the president believes, as I and I think everyone else believes, that Ali's a true patriot who represents the best of who we are as Americans. So Ali, thank you for your friendship, for your counsel, and for your service to our nation. America is so much better off because of you. You've touched so many lives in so many places, and I am lucky enough to count myself among them. With that, I'll turn it over to our guest of honor. Thank you.
I didn't expect to have to say this, but I am 5'7", and that is average for my weight. Thank you all for being here. It means a great deal to me, and all of you mean a great deal to me. To my colleagues and friends who have said such kind words today, thank you. Thank you for your service to our country, for the sacrifices you have made, including the many you have made for me, for being such great colleagues. We have been in the trenches together, and through it all, the ups and downs, the thick and thin, we've been side by side, not only as colleagues, but also as friends. Each of you has made me a better person by teaching me and by exhibiting qualities I have sought to embrace. Every kind word you've said of me today applies more so to you. I admire you so much. And I cherish our friendships. That is true of all of you, my DHS colleagues and our partners and friends throughout our broader community. It is together that we have worked to strengthen our Homeland Security. The greatest quality that makes our Department of Homeland Security so special is the fact that the kind words that were just said of me apply to tens of thousands of our colleagues across the country and around the world. Incredible people who give so much of themselves so that others' lives can be better, safer, and more secure. I have said many a time with absolute conviction, and I repeat it now, we have the best workforce in the world. As we are together in Hitchcock Hall today, there are FEMA personnel helping to aid people who have lost their homes in the fires ravaging Southern California. I have seen them deliver aid in Kentucky and North Carolina too, after devastating hurricanes and tornadoes. There are Border Patrol agents alone out in the field at great risk to themselves, guarding our safety. I've seen agents patrolling on foot in more than 110-degree heat and riding totally exposed in a boat on the Rio Grande in icy rain. Our refugee officers are working in destitute camps around the world, extending humanitarian relief to the most deserving and vulnerable in need. I've seen them at work in the camp at Dadaab on the Kenyan-Somali border. There are HSI agents fighting the global scourge of online exploitation of children. It was so very hard for me to view a single image, yet these courageous and selfless servants do it every day as they work to rescue young victims and hold perpetrators accountable. There are coasties, members of the United States Coast Guard navigating the waters off the coast of Bahrain, advancing our national interests. I have seen their gallant work on both coasts in cutters and icebreakers alike. And there are so many more doing so much more. I am in awe, and it has been the honor of my lifetime to support and work alongside all of you. I am grateful to the President and the Vice President for the opportunity. My admiration and affection for you have impacted my life in different ways, some small and light, some quite profound. A slice of the small and light. My sports allegiances have been turned absolutely upside down. I now root for teams that were my arch nemeses as a kid only because some of you love them. When one works so closely with people every day on matters that are so grave and so intense when one sees one's colleagues confront immense pressure with such unflinching integrity and undivided loyalty to mission and to the well-being of others. When we come together as such a close-knit team, the respect, admiration, and affection one develops can actually overcome even the strongest tribalism of one's deepest sports allegiances. I still cannot believe I have rooted for the Minnesota Vikings and the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Just one example of the more profound. Over the years, I've spoken with our daughters about the meaning of public service, about its nobility and the heroism it so often involves. I know my words as a parent have mattered, as have those of my wife, Tanya, who devoted years to public service as well. But seeing that nobility and heroism in action has had a far greater impact than any views we could express. That is exactly what Nick Olszewski, Ken Skaggs, Dan Zagadlo, and the Secret Service agents whom they have led have done. Our daughters have seen these agents, who have become family, stand in front of danger so that we could be safe. The agents have taught our daughters the nobility and heroism of the law enforcement profession and of the broader public service community more than our words ever could, and for that, I am forever grateful. I have often said that the work of Homeland Security cannot be done alone. We are a department of partnerships. Our department relies on partners in federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, and campus organizations and communities across the country, partners throughout the private sector and civil society and in countries across the globe. Security requires everyone's participation, and I am immensely proud of the partnerships we have strengthened and the new ones we have forged. Many of our partners have become my friends. To all who are here today, and to those whom you represent, thank you for your work with us, your support, and your friendship. To our alumni, with so many of whom I share memories from our work together, we stand, of course, on your shoulders, and we have built upon your accomplishments. Those of you who have been in my office have seen the pictures of my parents. Behind my desk. It is their wedding portraits from Havana, Cuba. Excuse me. I've had them hanging beside my office, beside me in my office, since July 1997, since my mother passed away. Certainly not because I need any reminder of how much I love them and what they mean to me. I don't need a picture for that. I think of them and they are with me every day. My parents sacrificed everything to bring me and my sister to this country, to be able to live in a democracy and have the opportunities America provides. They instilled in me a deep sense of our identity as refugees and what it means to be displaced. They also instilled in me an intensely strong patriotism, a deep love of this country, and that is what led me to public service. I have my parents' pictures beside me to remind me that I always need to work harder and to be a better person today than I was yesterday. The path of my parents' lives was broken by the communist takeover of Cuba, and my father sacrificed his own dreams to enable me to build and pursue my own. If I work hard enough, if I do good in the service of others, that good will introduce people to the beauty that was my parents. Through whatever I have done well, you have met my mother and father. Speaking further of love, for the past 4 years, rarely have I spoken with our daughters, Giselle and Mimi, without my cell phone in hand or immediately by my side. Often my work has interrupted our conversations and time together. Too often, I have allowed my thoughts of work to distract me. I have missed family vacations and time with you because of the work's demands. Giselle, Mimi, you didn't complain. In fact, you only offered words of understanding, comfort, and support. Your hearts are so big, your kindness so grand. I love you so much. Amidst the tumult of the world today, in the harsh sounds of caustic human discourse, I remain optimistic. That is because I look at the both of you, two strong, talented, kind young women with tremendous pride and with confidence that you will help build a better tomorrow. That did not happen by accident. It is not only because of who you are, it is also because of who you have become. And that, in great measure, is because your role model and best teacher is your mom. Tanya, I could not have served in this position or in the prior ones without you. The fulfillment has been that much more enriching, the pride that much more swelling, the difficulties and challenges that much easier to overcome because you've been at my side, always taking care of me and our family. I know too that you have felt the pains more than I have felt them myself, and that has caused my heart to ache. I love you, and my heart is yours. Together, the three of you are the soul of my soul. I return to my colleagues in DHS. What a privilege it is to draw meaning from one's work, to be fulfilled, to make life better for others, to serve our country, the greatest country in the world. That is what you do every single day. You and the public servants before you, in and out of uniform, have helped make this country the land where a father and mother can carry their son from Havana, Cuba, to safety here, work incredibly hard in a factory and an office, and then watch from heaven as their son has the incredible fortune of joining you. You are the very best. In recognition of your incredible talent, dedication, and sacrifice, I am proud, this one last time, to grant you, all personnel, 24 hours of administrative leave. I will follow up with a memo. It is very, very hard for me to leave. Please know, though, that I will champion and support you from wherever I am. As I have insisted and done in the past, despite the protocol that calls for DHS personnel to stand when the secretary enters the room, it is I who will always stand for you. Please take care of one another. Thank you for the greatest honor of my life. Thank you all for everything you do for our country.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, audience, for giving me enough time to pull myself together. Sir, thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, and for all of those of us who remain on the watch on the 20th and beyond for that sweet, sweet admin leave. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. Shuttle buses are waiting to transport you to the ceremonial entrance of the Monroe Building for a reception after this. We really hope you can join us there, but also on your future endeavors, we wish you safe travel, and thank you for supporting Secretary Mayorkas and our department. Thank you.